The needs of the queer and trans Palestinian community have shifted drastically over the last over 70 days of this ongoing genocide. Initially, many of the needs were for just a few $100s to support individuals to make it through the end of the month. This is back in October when some people were starting to lose their jobs, but for the most part, most people were still not impacted. In the last month and a half in particular, enormous amounts of people have lost their jobs, they've lost their housing, and doxing has gotten really, really bad for a ton of individuals. Like bad to the point of people are losing their jobs because of it, they're losing their housing, and they're having to relocate in the middle of the night because of what is currently happening. And so initially we were looking at supporting individuals with a few $100s. Now it's potentially up to $10,000 to just get a person started again. In addition to all of that, individuals are severely impacted because so many of us are also supporting our family members. So people are sending money home to Gaza, people are sending money home to the region, people, Sudanese individuals in particular, are also supporting immense amount of family members who have become refugees. The needs are immense, and queer and trans Palestinians and Sudanese people need your support. Things have also changed drastically for queer and trans Palestinians on the ground in Gaza. Over the last 2.5 months, we've seen a shift that has happened where initially individuals needed some access to some basic financial support to access food, some gas, just basic survival things. Unfortunately, things are at a place where the vast majority of Gaza is destroyed. Those things aren't inaccessible even if you have money. And now what's shifted over the last few weeks in particular is that individuals want to leave Gaza. Which has definitely shifted from the first month and a half of this genocide. Initially, people wanted to stay, but psychologically, genocide is so much, and so people are trying to leave. Now, if you're trying to leave Gaza, you need between $5,000 to $20,000 for a permit to leave. 5 is on the lowest end, and I actually have not worked with anyone who needed 5. Most are $10,000 to $20,000. Now, the biggest challenge with Gaza is, one, how are you getting money into Gaza? I was able to get some money in during the partial ceasefire. But the second thing that's also associated with that is this is a genocide. And so just because you're talking to someone, you're going to send them money, by the time it arrives doesn't mean that person will be alive. And I will say of every single queer Palestinian I've worked with in the last 2.5 months has been killed in that time. One of the biggest challenges with supporting queer and trans Palestinian community members right now is that prior to October 7th, if someone reached out and said, hey, I need some support with housing, I had different queer and trans organizations around what is known as the United States or around the world that I could send them to. However, after October 7th, due to pinkwashing and the fact that the vast majority of even service-related organizations have either released a pro-Zionist statement or have been completely silent about the genocides that are currently happening, we're no longer able to send anyone to those organizations. I can no longer, in good conscience, say, go to this specific Pride Center or to this space, because I don't actually know how awful that space could potentially be for a queer and trans Palestinian. And so a lot of the service work that was carried by so many other organizations now has to be carried by organizations such as Masgd and other organizations that historically do not have the resources or the capacity to do this work, but now we have to because we can't send people to other places anymore because of how silent everybody has been. And so if you are an organization and you're actually like, no, we're so here for queer and trans Palestinians, wonderful, vocalize it, publicize it, make a big deal out of it so that we know to send people to you instead of avoiding you because we don't know. Silence is complicitness right now. We're trying to support as many queer and trans Palestinians, Armenians, Sudanese folks as we can through Masgd, through the money that is coming from Blood Orange and from other funders and donors that have been involved in the process. With over $40,000 in requests over just the last couple of weeks, have been able to get about $15,000 out there. We also recognize that the needs of the queer and trans Palestinian community right now are so much greater than just financial, and so we're also running a free one-on-one peer support program that's available to anyone harmed by the genocide, and we have over a dozen people who are a part of that, most of whom are trans Palestinians. We're supporting people on the ground as much as we can, as much as communication will allow. The money from Blood Orange, my poetry book in particular, that's able to go to Gaza, whereas the money from the nonprofit is only able to stay within what is known as the United States. So ways that you can support: buy Blood Orange. That money goes directly to folks on the ground as much as humanly possible. The other areas is make a donation to Masgd, and we will make sure to get that money to the folks who need it the most, and to be able to operate our different check-in spaces and the one-on-one peer support spaces. Masgd's also running an auction right now with different books, services, things like that. So definitely check it out on their page.